or shit get off the pot.
The views and opinions expressed by callers, guests, and hosts do not necessarily reflect those of the Black Talk Radio Network and Black Talk Media Project. Black Talk Radio is new black media for the new millennium.
Just lift your eyes up, let your wise rise up. See the signs of the times if it's time. Rise up, rise up. When death and hell dwell among all God's people. When those we chose and trusted have become completely corrupted and inherently evil. When the feast that feeds you starves our father's children. When snuff, porn, and pedo forms begin to get top billing. Rise up. When famine claims millions. When justice gives blind eyes to billions. When the Lord's anger is no longer feared. If his protection is gone and your enemies are near. If you've seen the seas spill over and the mountains shake, break, and fall. If the moon ever turns blood red and you can't see the sun at all. Rise up. No matter if the prize is high in the skies.
Peace and welcome to New Abolitionist Radio, a program that seeks to educate, inform, and agitate on the issue of 21st century slavery. It's hosted by social activist and spoken word poet Max Parthas with New Abolitionist and actionist Johanna Elia and Black Talk Media Project founder Scotty Reed. On this program, we discuss recent news on legalized 21st century slavery and human trafficking, along with projects and people who help combat it. Today is October 5th, 2016. We'll be going over the history and applications of the exploited 13th Amendment in anticipation and preparation for the release of the groundbreaking and highly anticipated films 13th and Birth of a Nation this Friday. A rider of the 21st Century Underground Railroad is Jerome Morgan. On January 17, 2014, he walked out of prison after spending 20 years incarcerated for a crime he did not commit. Our abolitionist in profile will be provided by Scotty Reed. Expect all of that and more tonight on New Abolitionist Radio. If you'd like to share a comment or question, call in and join us at 1-641-715-3660. The access code is 549-032#. If you're already on the conference line, all you have to do is press star 6 and 1 to queue up from the conference line. Once again, I'm Max Parthas. What's happening, Brother Scotty? What's up, Johanna?
I don't see Johanna on the board yet, but I'm here. I'm doing okay, man.
Right.
Just trying to hold it down.
How you been affected by that hurricane? Is it coming your way as well?
No. Now, hey, I haven't been. I've been tied to this computer in the studio all day, working. So I haven't even been watching television or anything to hear about a hurricane coming this way. Why is one supposed to come this way?
Well, it's hitting South Carolina from what they're telling me. We already have declared a state of emergency. They're shutting down all the public offices and government buildings and such. People are getting off work. Just went to pick up my daughter from work, and all along the way, like every 2 blocks, there's squads of police cars parked right there and posted up. They've already called out 1,800 National Guard here for South Carolina. A year ago today, we lost our home in the other flood that happened, supposedly once every 1,000 years. Well, here we are a year later, looking at another 1,000-year flood.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything about North Carolina. It's not even a good breeze outside. So, I'm in the western part of North Carolina. I don't know where this hurricane is supposed to hit. So, I'm not going to worry about it, though, man.
Well, they evacuated South Carolina's coastline up here. From what I understand, mandatory evacuation for people along the coast.
Yeah, I don't live in a flood zone or a flood area. The only thing we got to watch out for is trees around here.
Man, I'm hoping that we don't get hit too hard with it. Like I said, it was just a year ago we lost everything in the same circumstances. But here we are tonight on New Abolitionist Radio, and it's bearing down on us. But I'm excited, Scotty. I'm very excited And I just feel such a sense of accomplishment and pride knowing that the 13th is due out in less than 48 hours. We're setting up different communities who are getting together to view it collectively. So, we can see for ourselves what is here. I haven't seen the whole film, but just the clip alone has got me excited because it seems like they're focusing on exactly what we've been preaching as gospel here on New Abolitionist Radio for the past 4 years.
Well, like you said, though, it seems like, and so I've said the same thing. Based off the clips, it does appear that she will have the same message that we have had for going on 4 years. So, that's the fact that slavery was never abolished. It was just moved to the prisons. And so I'm hoping that will be the plot. Well, I don't know if documentaries have plots, but I hope that will be the subject matter of, this film. And so again, if you don't have a Netflix account, it's not that expensive, but right now you can get an account free for 30 days. So you can watch the film and then cancel it.
Right. And if you don't want to do that, just get together with someone who does. It's best to watch it as a group so you can talk about it afterwards. I mean, this is so important, and it's been the core issue of what we've been dealing with now for 150 years. Scotty calls it the greatest deception ever perpetuated on American citizens in the history of this nation. And I can't disagree with him on that. It very likely is the greatest deception we've ever faced. To be told that slavery ended when it, in fact, did not in formally through legislation, nor in practice. Not for a moment, a day, a minute, a second at all.
Right. So I do want to welcome in those who are listening on our YouTube channel for Black Talk Radio. This is the first time that we're broadcasting live on YouTube with New Abolitionist Radio. It's something that I started with the programs that I engineer earlier this week, just trying to reach more people, reach as many people as possible, the best we can with the information that they so desperately need. And many of them don't even know they need it. But do want to welcome in the YouTube listeners. If you have any questions or comments, you can send those in via the YouTube chat as well.
Word, that's more groundbreaking and momentum that we're achieving here with the Black Talk Radio Network.
Yes,
there
sir.
to go, Scotty.
Just trying to reach more
in
people.
Combination with our forums.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I said in combination with the new social network that you set up.
Oh, yeah, btrcommunity.com, yeah. Yeah, and so how are you liking it, Max, thus far, BTR Community?
So far, I'm enjoying my experience there. There's quite a bit of room for improvement and linking, I guess. Like, it's kind of difficult to share from there to other networks. You have to copy and paste, and if you're not a member,
that's kind of on purpose. Yeah, that's kind of on purpose. You can share the videos; those have the share tools, but that's kind of on purpose because in order for me to do that, I would have to open up a back door to our platform for Facebook, and I'm not going to do that.
Right. I hear that. Well,
we do have Johanna joining us.
Then to populate this social network to the point where we won't need to reach out to any other social networks.
Yeah, so, that wasn't my main concern on being able to share to other networks because, again, this is a community that was created with the privacy of the user first and foremost in mind and its security. So I don't want to open up any back doors to these other networks to where they can exploit that and possibly be doing some nefarious things. So I want to keep it closed off to those networks. So the video section, it does have the share tools, and it didn't require me to, establish a backdoor connection to Facebook or Twitter or the other groups. So that's good enough for me. But we do have Johanna. What's going on, Johanna?
What's up, brother? What's wrong?
Oh, man, good to be with y'all. Sorry I'm running just a little bit late, but I was able to hear most of Max's intro and the dialogue y'all been having so far, so good to be here with y'all.
Scotty, I remember like a year ago, man, when I asked you to please develop some kind of a YouTube version or video posting site for people of color, for black people in America, because of what I was seeing on those sites. Like, it really disgusts me to no end when I see these snuff films of my brothers and sisters being brutalized and murdered and killed. But before you watch it, you got to get a message from Geico. Or you got to hear about Subway's new sandwiches. Or all kinds of different leeches just sucking out our life and exploiting our deaths. It just totally disgusted me. And I remember asking you, could you please put something together for us? We really don't have to do this. If we're going to put something like that on, let it be something relevant that makes a damn difference in our lives and helps us, not just some vampire sucking off anything that's popular.
Right. As you know, BTRcommunity.com is not monetized in that way. You don't see any ads or anything, and we can do that because we are trying to raise the funds not only to improve the network and maintain what we have, but to expand our other media operations. So we just got a subscription, very small fee, $24 a year. Certainly, you could probably save that if you cut back on sodas or something. So
yeah, I doubt if you'll see anything like that on Black Talk Radio Network for sure, where you have to go and watch the latest killing of a young unarmed black man, woman, or child, and have to watch a Geico commercial before you get to see them brutally murdered in front of your face. It's disgusting. Anyway, like I said, I am very excited about this 13th coming out and Birth of a Nation. And I guess that in itself is another conversation that we'll probably get into throughout here. Johanna, how are you feeling at this point? I mean, because as I said earlier, it is kind of like the culmination of a lot of what we've been doing here, using the word Scotty does, propaganda, and getting this information out and disseminating it to the point where now it's being featured for the first time in the history of the New York Film Festival. A documentary is being premiered there on the 7th, and at the same time being released worldwide via Netflix on the 7th. So it really seems like a climax moment. How do you feel, man?
I mean, I'm happy about it, man. I'm I guess an eternal skeptic until they show me something different. I believe that the positive things about it, I'll start with that. The positives about it, obviously, we have affected the narrative, and not just us, but the people that we can trust that have been in the trenches with New Abolitionist Radio, with Black Talk Radio Network, as far back as my earliest times of hearing these conversations on the air, through Political Prisoner Radio, and just following that over to New Abolitionist Radio. So people that have been there for the last several years, and then all the people that we've met along the way that have been doing it since, Angela Davis days and on further back than that. So, yes, there's definitely people that are on the level that we can trust, that have had this proclamation in their mouth and this truth in their heart and a burning passion to get that out there and to make a change. That's been there. So definitely, I trust those people, and I'm thankful that this is becoming a more mainstream conversation. I'm thankful because I remember the 2012 election, and this wasn't even a part of the conversation. So to see on the eve of this year's election, the movies coming out, I'm happy about that. I only hope that she goes all the way. I only hope that, like you and I discussed, other things don't get put into the media narrative to drown it out. We know the prison strike is going on a month old, and there's still no mainstream coverage because the people that fund media, mainstream media, are all the people that are using slave labor, so they're not going to tell people about that. They're not going to pay for advertising on networks that are going to show that info, so none of those networks are going to show it. Same thing with this movie. I just hope that the people that have the money that control the narrative don't snuff it out if it is good, and I hope they didn't kind of nip it in the bud before she even got it made, that it doesn't go far enough. It needs to go far enough. It needs to be alarming. It needs to shake up the narrative, and that's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, indeed. I have trepidations as well, and my trepidation stems from the people that are involved in it. You know what I mean? Who I see on there. Like, I love Michelle Alexander, and I'm very appreciative of how much she's opened up conversation on mass incarceration. But the problem is we're not dealing with mass incarceration, and she's never come out and called this slavery. So, her being on there is good and bad at the same time. Same thing with Newt Gingrich. Like, Newt Gingrich is probably right at the center of white supremacy in this nation. You know what I mean? So they've got him on there also saying things as well. So I'm hoping that people don't get pushed in the wrong direction of understanding.
Right.
And start, we're back to Jim Crow, and this right here is just a mistake done over time, and we can reform it. I know this is slavery. It's a crime against humanity. It's been going on now. Well, if you count all of slavery, it's been going on for like 500 years, but this deception has been going on now for 150 years, and it's reached its climax as of the last 45 years with the introduction of private prisons and with Richard Nixon's war on drugs. So I have trepidations, but I also know that we influence this society indirectly on a pretty large scale. We're among the reasons why even this conversation is even being had, because there really wasn't that many people out there pushing it as hard as we are, or getting it out there as far as we are. And then we reach multiple countries right here from New Abolitionist Radio.
On that influence. But first, let me just read this from the New York Film Festival director, where the film had already debuted. It actually is running from September the 30th through October the 16th at the New York Film Festival. The tickets went on sale on the 11th, but this is what the director had to say after watching this film. While I was watching the 13th, his name is Kent Jones. While I was watching the 13th, the distinction between documentary and fiction gave way, and I felt like I was experiencing something so rare, direct contact between the artist and right now, this very moment. In fact, Ava is actually trying to redefine the terms on which we discuss where we're at, how we got here, and where we're going. The 13th is a great film. It's also an act of true patriotism. So I just want to apply those words to the abolitionists out there. Okay, not that I need awards, not that I need somebody pat me on the back to do the work that I do, but I've been at this a long time. Others have been out there longer than me at this, like Max. And Johanna's been with us for quite some time. And I want to say we are the ones who have redefined this conversation. You point me to another media source that has been talking about the 13th Amendment consistently and not calling it mass incarceration, but calling it slavery. What it is, according to the 13th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, the highest law of the land, they say. It ain't the new Jim Crow. It's the same old Crow. You know what I'm saying? So this is just a continuation of slavery and terrorism. And so, but I'm just going to apply his words to all you abolitionists out there who have been putting in work. You are true patriots. And a listener has sent me an email. I think this is the first time I'm mentioning it on air, but we have talked about it on air before. But a listener, it was last week, sent me an email, and they sent me a screenshot of Colorado's Amendment T. That's what it's called, Amendment T. But it's a ballot initiative that will remove the slavery exception clause from the Colorado Constitution. So I don't believe in coincidences. We've been at this for 4 years now. We have been putting information out to people, reaching out to people, calling people out. putting up petitions to the CEO of USA Inc. and asking him in Congress to remove the 13th Amendment exception whenever they had their little propaganda ceremonies celebrating the 150th anniversary of the 13th Amendment. And we were covering that, and we were pointing out, if the 13th Amendment, they so proud of it, then why at this ceremony do they not have a copy of it for people to read it for themselves? Because if they read for themselves and they have good English comprehension, they'll be like, hold up, wait a minute. Except for punishment for crime, how can you abolish something and then have an exception to it? So shout out to the abolitionists out there that's been putting in work. And as Yohanan mentioned, we're talking Angela Davis. We're talking other people in the Black Panther Party who have been talking about it for decades. We're also talking about Lee Wood, who in 1971, I believe, either 71 or 72, published the book Prison Slavery, talking about the 13th Amendment and everything. So, you know, this, and Max, you said something earlier about this. I hope this isn't the climax, Max. I hope that a documentary coming out ain't the climax of this movement, because I'm
a climax.
Oh, one. Okay, got you. Because the climax would be when we finally abolish slavery once and for all.
Well, for me, that it's always been the goal, to free people, to free those innocent people who are being tortured, murdered, killed, abused, and exploited right now. That should be the priority of all of us. You know what I mean? However we get to that thing. But as far as on a propaganda level, to get this information out there at this level is a very big thing. You know what I mean? It's a watershed moment because now you can't have an excuse like you can't find it. It's worldwide. It's available for everybody to see. And it's getting all kinds of accolades. If you're not watching it, it's because you're choosing not to watch it. So we have done our job to that point. You know what I mean? We've gotten that out there, and we're going to have to keep pushing it. I already know that. It's not going to be the end-all, be-all, but this is a huge tool for us now to be able to further show that we've been the ones all along making sense here. And, you know, you mentioned Angela Davis, and I've given her credit, too, just like Ava DuVernay has given her credit as well for inspiring this film. And I've given her credit for making me an abolitionist when she put the call out that we needed a 21st century abolitionist movement. But at the same time, recently I'm hearing from her where she's saying that anybody that doesn't vote for Hillary Clinton or the Democratic Party are narcissists. She's basically calling us all selfish for not voting for the Clintons. It really broke my heart, man. I didn't know what to expect. I mean, the mother of the modern abolitionist movement endorsing the mother of mass incarceration. And it just blew my mind. I really want to hear more about how she came to this conclusion that it's our fault and we're narcissists if we don't vote for the same person that killed millions of our family members, incarcerated tens of millions of our men, women, and children, and decimated entire communities. And because she's the face of the Democratic Party, that we're selfish not to just endorse her? I don't understand that.
Try decimated whole countries.
Right. And, you know, we've taken this farther than Angela Davis took it, more directly to slavery. That was been our mission. We've connected the dots that this is slavery. It's not worthy of prison abolition. It's worthy of slavery abolition. You can't stand there and say to the world that slavery was never abolished and then ask for prison abolition. You're kind of skipping a part right there.
Right. Well, I forgot to give out the telephone number in case we have anybody that wants to ask a question, make a comment. You can call us at 641-715-3660. The participant code is 549-032#. Just hit *6 and 1. And we'll bring you on air. We still got about 6 minutes before we take our break at the bottom of or halfway through the first hour. Guys, y'all want to get started with the program and get into some of these stories?
I thought we had already done that. I thought we had already done that.
I meant some of the intelligence reports from the field.
Well, indeed, I do want to let people know also, since we've started New Abolitionist Radio here, we've got a lot of people to start running on abolitionist platforms in politics, congressmen and senators and things like that. They've been on this program, even down to city council, to start looking at things in more of an abolitionist perspective. And we've got another potential congressman doing that right now by the name of Frank Shaw Francois. And he published the clip of the 13th, which I'd like for our audience to hear here today. And he said, time to abolish the 13th Amendment, repeal it or totally modify it, end all prisons for profit, put an end to private jails and prisons. As a congressman, this is another thing I will work to end. To hell with the Clintons. Vote for Jill Stein. Please do your own research and share this information. Signed, Frank Shaw Francois. So that's pretty cool to hear more people running on an abolitionist platform. I'm not too keen on other things when you say these are other things, like this should be the thing. Nothing else is bigger than this. But I understand that they have constituents with issues that they have to deal with in addition to that. Anyway, like I said, we're 3 minutes out. We're going to talk more about the 13th Amendment, its history, where we found out about it personally, how it has affected us. How far back does the 13th Amendment go? Where did it first appear, and how was it used? All that information we want to try to provide to you tonight, along with other stories that we have to share. So unless you want to say something, or Johannan, we'll take our first break, and when we come back, if you want to call in, press star 6 and 1 to queue up. We'll take your calls, and we'll talk about this thing.
I'm all good. We'll take the break. That's cool.
All right. Okay.
Say here.
Yeah. All right. So you're listening to New Abolitionist Radio. Again, the number to call if you have a question or a comment. If you're not quite convinced that slavery was never abolished in this country, then allow us to point you to the evidence to show you that it was not. And that is what we're dealing with. I would say that slavery is the main root of the problems that people are complaining about today. It's not police brutality. These are slave catchers who are doing their job. And when has slavery ever been, nice or pleasant or anything? You have to be brutal to enforce slavery. So that's what we see going on. Got to intimidate your potential victims and whatnot so that they'll come along willingly. So you're listening to New Abolitionist Radio. We'll be back on the other side. Radio since 2008, providing new black media for the masses.
Welcome back to New Abolitionist Radio. Today we're concentrating on the 13th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution in anticipation of the new film, The 13th, coming out by Ava DuVernay, released on Netflix worldwide October 7th and premiering at New York Film Festival. It is the heart and the crux of the matters that we've been dealing with here for 150 years, and is the root cause of our issues. Primarily, many of us think so as abolitionists, that we need to end this modern-day slavery.
Max, we got a call.
Yes.
Let's take this call before we jump in, okay?
Oh, okay. We got a call. Welcome to New Abolitionist Radio. Please state your name, where you're calling from, and your question or comment.
Yeah. Name's Ramon, calling from Colorado, 719.
Please, brother, calling from Colorado, where we were just talking about that exception clause.
Yeah, we've been pretty popular with Scotty today. That's Scotty. What did I hear you say about a change in? Because I just started reading our Constitution.
There's going to be a change in the exception clause. Most of the state constitutions simply mirror the U.S. Constitution when it talks about slavery. And so, like many other states, like North Carolina is one of the exceptions. North Carolina does not have an exception clause. It says slavery shall be abolished, period. Point blank. That's the end of the sentence. Okay, but in Colorado, they have the exception clause where you can be put into slavery as punishment for a crime whereof a party has been duly convicted, and we know what that means and what have you. So, there's a ballot initiative. It's going to be on the ballot in Colorado this coming November, a ballot initiative to remove the exception clause from the Colorado Constitution.
Right. Okay, that's what I was trying to catch that you were saying. Thanks. And that's what we were trying to do. Me and my wife just talked about that. We're trying to get everybody together locally here to sit down and do like maybe a ballot reading and interpretation to help everybody understand exactly what the hell is on these ballots and how, we don't need to know your vote, but you definitely need to know what you want to be voting for. So I appreciate you putting that information out there. Thank you, and I'll mute my line.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for the call, brother. Well, I haven't pulled up here.
Wins like that, man. We just need a couple of wins, a couple of states to be able to pass legislation to change that amendment, take it out. That's really the beginning is what we need.
Hey, guys, give me a second so I can organize myself on the board. I'm going to clear the caller's queue.
Q&A queue is cleared.
And that should have left Johannan and Max unmuted. Okay, yeah, y'all unmuted. Go ahead.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes.
You can hear me too.
All right.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
I was just saying. I was just gonna say I got the Amendment T information pulled up in front of me. Like you said, it's on the ballot for the November 8th election. So.
Hey, can you put that on New Abolitionist Radio too, so others can see it?
I could put it in the BTR community because my abolitionist revolutionary post.
Okay, that's right. All right.
Got me banned from the Facebook for 30 days. So I'll put it on the BTR community page, and then y'all can put it over to New Abolitionist Radio. But it's saying that, like what we already been discussing, remove the language. It just says, clearly, Amendment T proposes amending the Colorado Constitution to remove language that currently allows slavery and involuntary servitude to be used as punishment for the conviction of a crime. It goes on to define slavery as defined by Black's Law Dictionary is a situation in which one person has absolute power over the life, fortune, and liberty of another person. The U.S. Supreme Court has defined involuntary servitude as a condition of servitude in which one person is forced to work for another person by the use of threat of physical restraint or physical injury, or by the use of threat or coercion through law or the legal process. And it talks about how Colorado's Constitution, as well as the U.S. Constitution, allows for this. Under Article 2, Section 26 of the Colorado Constitution, slavery and involuntary servitude are prohibited except as punishment for the conviction of a crime. Amendment T will remove this exception. They go on to mention offender work requirements in the justice system as far as prison work requirements and community service, saying that, and then defining what those are. It also talks about probation, where courts will require that offenders sentenced to probation maintain suitable employment and pursue employment-related education or vocational training. So it's saying that the argument for this amendment is that in the Constitution allows for slavery and involuntary servitude. It says removing the language reflects fundamental values of freedom and equality and makes an important symbolic statement. There are 25 other states that do not have any language related to slavery and involuntary servitude in their Constitution, and both prison and work community service programs are available to operate within those states. Now, I was right here with y'all when we did the state constitution series for an entire year. I'm not familiar with 25 states having no language related to slavery and involuntary servitude. From what I understood, we only found like 2 states that didn't have language.
Actually, that does sound about right. A little bit more than half, I would say, had something in there from the research that we were doing, if I remember correctly.
Some other states, like
a couple dozen didn't have them.
Yeah, some of the states did, like the border states, like Missouri and what have you. You know, the expansion states back in the 1800s. They didn't have anything referring to slavery in their constitution, but you will find something related to prison. You know, prison debt. What do they call it? Debtor's prison. Saying that debtors' prisons are prohibited, but then again, you know, they still do that. You know, I think the ACLU came out a report, and the Southern Poverty Law Center came out with reports on the use of debtors' prisons and what have you. So the patterns and practices are there, whether or not, you know, I feel like if they don't have anything in their Constitution, then they're just defaulting to the U.S. Constitution.
Right. There was something that you said in reading that there that kind of struck me, and I wanted to go over it again, Johanna. You said you read the Black's Laws Dictionary's definition of a slave, and it reminded me of something that was said by a correctional officer down here in South Carolina. And let me see if I can pull it up, what you just said there. Black's Laws. A person, it says, what is a slave? A person who is wholly subject to the will of another, one who has no freedom of action, but whose person and services are wholly under the control of another. That's Webster, one who is under the power of a master and who belongs to him. So the master may sell and dispose of his person, of his industry, and of his labor without his being able to do anything, have anything, or acquire anything but what must belong to the master. Now, that's what is a slave in Black Laws Dictionary. Now, this officer out in Richfield, South Carolina said, you control every part of their life, and if you are doing it right, they can't do anything to you. Isn't that the description right there? Right. You control every part of their life. That's what you're doing from the moment they wake up to the moment they go to bed. And they don't have choices about whether they got to work or not, because you know you will be punishing them with solitary confinement or bird feeding or all kinds of dangerous and crazy stuff if they don't go and do your daily jobs. And then some of these jobs we've been talking about, a million of them across the nation, are as much as like fighting fires in California for the Justice Department out there. They got juveniles doing it and prisoners. We have prisoners handling our ballot boxes during the elections. When BP oil spill went down, they had prisoners clean it up. You got Verizon using call centers, and I've heard reports that as many as 30 some odd prisons in California have factories built inside of them.
Yeah, man. They are in every industry. There's no industry. They have my little brother when he was 10 years a slave working on a poultry farm, processing turkeys and what have you. But that Black's Law dictionary definition of slavery or what a slave is, I would say that's too narrow, because we know from our study of doing abolitionist profile that enslaved persons sometimes were paid slave wages. So I don't want them to.
That's where you got slave wages from.
Yeah, I don't want them to use that and say, oh, well, if they getting paid 12 cents an hour, then they're getting something, and they're going to take that and save it up and buy something from the canteen. So they don't fit that definition. So I think that's too narrow of a definition, and it doesn't apply. It's just too general. There are many caveats to how they practice slavery in this country. And again, the term slave wages comes from the fact that some highly skilled enslaved Africans that were providing some kind of extra value to the person, the evil person enslaving them, would sometimes allow them a little small wage, and they would save that up, sometimes purchase lottery tickets, and if they won, they would buy their freedom, or they would save up for years and purchase their freedom from the person enslaving them. So, just cause a person getting paid doesn't mean they're not a slave.
Right. There's another definition by John Ruskin, 1819 to 1900, in Abolitionists, and he simply said the distinguishing sign of slavery is to have a price and to be bought for it. Today, that price for a child like Khalif Browder, rest in peace, who is one of the features in the 13th, was $353,000. $353,000 a year is the price of incarceration for a teenage boy in New York State. It's the highest in the country to put him in these private facilities. Unfortunately, they sent Khalif Browder to an adult facility in New York, Rikers Island, where he was abused by guards on video, potentially molested by the fellow prisoners there, where he was a child at, held with no crime, no charges for 3 years, went through all this abuse, and then finally released without so much as our bad, we made a mistake, and ended up committing suicide. So $353,000 in New York is what the price of a child is. Here in South Carolina, it's $161,000. In New Jersey, it's $240,000 for one child to be incarcerated for 1 single year. That's just talking about the children.
Johann, I have a question for you. Have you ever come across a breakdown from the private prison industry on how much they make per? I know they call it per bed, but we know that's just a nice way of not calling people slaves.
Yeah, the closest thing that I can remember we've had on was like off the quarterly earnings calls where they would talk about how many beds and then how many millions each bed translate into, and you just have to divide it by that. So I know they talked about, like even with this contract now, this is a good way to get that introduced into the program. Is since we're reporting on the Bureau of Prisons saying a month or so ago that they weren't going to renew any contracts.
That was Department of Justice.
Yeah, they. This is a prime example. The Geo Group got a renewal of the contract to take in 1,800 beds at this with D. Ray James down in Folkson, Georgia. So when they give you the amount that was for, like how much they renegotiated that for, and I want to say it was like $3 million, but. However, so I mean that's like the numbers that we typically get. I haven't seen anything that they put out ordinarily that just says like what each bed is worth per se, but they will say in those earnings calls when they get contracts, they will say like however many thousands of people, how many beds they represent, how much that contract is worth. But it can include like health care, that can include maybe some other aspects of what the contract is for that's not specifically just per bed. So I really don't know. Let me see if I can find something for you.
Yeah, we do got a caller. I want to bring in this caller, but I guess we'll talk about this afterwards. But yeah, that was the Department of Justice a few weeks ago said that they were not going to renew any contracts with the private prisons. And so the Bureau of Prisons is under the DOJ. So somebody not following orders or somebody didn't get the memo. Okay, because they turned around and renewed that contract with the Geo Group. But area code 910, you're on New Abolitionist Radio. Yeah.
At some point, I want to read some research that I did on the 13th Amendment, and I also want to end the program with a poem by Frederick Douglass that I found. So just giving you a heads up.
Okay. Area code 910, go ahead with your question or comment.
How's it going, fellas? First of all, I want to make a comment about the show, especially towards you, Mr. Reed. I stumbled across you guys' radio station by listening to the TuneIn app about 4 months ago. And I listen to you guys every day while I'm at work. And you guys are like a treasure trove of information, and I learned so much. Like, I used to listen to music while I was working every day. And since I've stumbled across listening to you guys, man, my playlist gets no play. I just listen and learn, and it's just so informative. And I've been looking for something like this for so long, and because I used to listen to a lot of NPR and a lot of talk radio, and I was so disgusted by the lack of I guess news about us on these different platforms. And ever since I've been listening to you guys, it seems like you guys just been waking me up. I can't speak for everybody else, but I know me and my wife, we enjoy the topics, the conversation, and how you guys just keep it 100% real. That slavery never was abolished. It's just everything in the word. And my question is, well, I guess it's not really a question. It's just that when I try to tell some of my friends and coworkers the information that I learned on you guys' platform, they look at me like I am telling them the absolute lie, like I'm blowing smoke in their face, and it breaks my heart that it just reminds me like they're in the Matrix. Why did you take the wrong pill? I'm trying to wake you up and let you know it's time to basically come together. Let's get these resources. We got to become hoarders and get everything that we're going to need for the future, because it's about to get really, really rougher than what we seeing now. And I just want to thank you guys for everything, all the topics, all the radio shows that's on this platform. I just want to say thank you. And that was my main reason of calling. Brother Johanna, Mr. Reed, Max, please keep doing this. I'm going to become a member of the BTR community because, like I say, I listen to you guys every day, all day. I have to charge my phone to get back to it. I've even listened to shows that I listened to before just so I know, because I may have missed something. I drive a noisy forklift all day, and it's unbelievable when I talk to these guys and they just look at me like I'm not telling them the truth. What is there anything that I could tell them?
In terms of,
I wrote something earlier today, and I'll read it to you. It's real short. Maybe you can tell them something like that as well. It's really understanding where you're at. According to records, Harriet Tubman said, "I freed 1,000 slaves. I could have freed 1,000 more if I could have just convinced them that they were still slaves." Now think about that.
Right, right. I think Max must have dropped. Max must have dropped. Another thing I would recommend is just printing out the 13th Amendment and circle or put in parentheses the exception clause that says except for punishment for crime, and let them read it and ask them what do you think this says, and then wait for their answer.
I got that on my phone. It's on my phone with the technology that we have, and I'm telling you, it's just, I live here in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and it's.
Hey, sorry about that.
Yeah, me too. I'm originally from.
Go ahead.
Well,
let me finish reading to you, and so you could get your answer to the question that you asked, and then we'll continue on with it. But I just want to read it to you. I want you to think about the time that she said that and this time now. So at the height of slavery in the 1800s, while an underground railroad was operating, and every law, every person knew and proclaimed that slavery was the law of the land, this one woman, risking her life to bring people out of bondage, couldn't convince half the slaves she met that they were still slaves. So I have no illusions what kind of brainwashing, delusional society I'm dealing with. It took 500 years to get us where we're at right now in the way of thinking. We're not going to change that overnight.
You're right. Well, like I said, I just wanted to call and say thanks. I'm Brother Vince calling from Fayetteville, and you guys have a great night.
All right, thank you, Brother Vince.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah.
Q&A queue is cleared.
Sound like he out there doing abolitionist work, man, But I also, let me just use a quick Bible parable, and it's the parable about the seeds, and that when you plant seeds, sometimes it will, fall on thorny ground. Sometimes it might fall on good soil and spring up and bear fruit. So all you can do is plant the seed, and maybe somebody else will come along and get them some more information, and that'll represent the water. And then maybe one day they'll put it all together, and that'll represent, the harvest. And so, yeah, just keep sharing the information. Don't get discouraged, man. Really, don't get discouraged. I wouldn't try to beat anybody over the head with the information, but plant that seed and then move on to the next soil that may be more fertile.
For me, one of the most important tools that I've ever been a part of is the recreation of Frederick Douglass's speech, "I denounce this so-called emancipation as a stupendous fraud." We did a video collection that's 9 parts long during a historic period in time, and we broke down and recited his words and then showed in contemporary videos exactly what he was talking about. That is a teaching tool of a very high caliber that we were involved in. So if you really want people to learn more, try to get them to watch that. It's called "I Denounce This So-Called Emancipation as a Stupendous Fraud," and it's available on YouTube and at thenewwordorder.com. thenewwordorder.com.
Oh, yeah, and don't forget to tell them about the documentary film that's going to be on Netflix on October the 7th, I think at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern time. But it's a big deal on Netflix, and so they have a 30-day free trial. So even if they don't want to, end up paying for it, I would get a free subscription just to watch that film and invite other people over. I plan on having a watch party here at the house.
Yeah, and I'm planning on doing the same thing, having a watch party at the house. As a matter of fact, I spoke to Johanna earlier today and was saying you and I and him should get together afterwards and have a discussion. I mean, while it's still fresh in our minds, and then just have a conference call and talk about what we just saw.
Well, I actually had thought about scheduling a radio program, like a after party for the show. I mean, for the film.
Well, let's do that.
Okay.
Let's do that. Bring others in and let's talk about what
I
we
have
just
to
saw. So we'll have our community meeting right here on our community.
Okay, so Friday night. Okay, yeah, we're good because Friday night is clear. Friday night's clear, yeah.
That's going to be awesome. If you're listening right now and you want to be a part of that conversation after viewing with us, make sure you keep in touch with Scotty, follow his page so he can let you know when and where that will be available.
Yeah, it'll be published to blacktalkradionetwork.com like the other programs.
Word.
Well, hey, let me speak this in. Can y'all hear me? Yeah, let me throw this in there quick, Scotty. To your question, when the brother called in, I did remember we had talked about the cost with Geo as far as the family detentions. I don't know if y'all remember when we got that deep into it a couple of years ago. I did find some notes that we had from the program previously. $112.50 per detainee per day. This is through their ICE contracts, Immigration and Customs Enforcement contracts. The standard is $112.50 per day per detainee. And then there's other contracts like in Texas where they got state daycare licenses for these detention centers so they could hold entire families down to the little babies. So in Texas, family detention ranges from $266 to $298 per bed per day. So you're looking at a range from around 100 to up to about 300 a day, just depending on if it's a single individual or family through their ICE contracts. CCA with private prisons state to state varies as well, kind of in that same range, about 125 a day. So, I mean, this is the numbers, man.
Thank you.
Word.
Max, you might want to get into the research you did on the 13th.
Okay, yeah. This is something I published a year ago on the 14th of February, 2015, as a matter of fact, where I broke down what I had learned about the 13th Amendment. And it starts like this because this is just how I write as a spoken word artist. As I said before, I'm nobody from nowhere. I don't possess the credentials to tell anyone anything. I'm just a guy like you who wanted to know and found answers followed by a solution Answers I'm willing to share. With research, I could probably trace every president's involvement with tweaking the prison slavery system all the way back to Lincoln's 13th Amendment. Instead, I'd like to focus on 4 of them, Lincoln, all recent, plus Lincoln, all recent. It helps put things into a clear perspective. It's real simple to understand, and you won't find reasoning like this in your history books. For now, all you need is eyes to see and ears to hear. From here on in, critical thinking is required. The title is How Legalized Slavery Exists in America, Part 1 of 4, Lincoln's Betrayal. Lincoln was a professed white supremacist who intentionally betrayed everyone with the 13th Amendment exception clause, which allowed prisoners to be slaves. As a lawyer looking for a loophole in a bad situation, facing growing unrest due to human rights violations and fearing slave rebellions, he used an example set by Alabama and Ohio, both of which had convict leasing systems in place as far back as 1840 and 1846. The earliest appearance of the exception clause is in the Constitution that I have found that traces back to Vermont, 1777. It is said that they were the first to abolish slavery, but that's not what they really did. Although it was a great example of how to recreate slavery, and to this day, Vermont's constitutional allowances for slavery are the most ridiculous of all 50 states, allowing enslavement for debts in a vague offense called the like. Let's read it, shall we? Constitution of the State of Vermont. Chapter 1, a declaration of the rights of the inhabitants of the state of Vermont. Article 1st, all persons born free, their natural rights, slavery prohibited. That all persons are born equally free and independent and have certain natural, inherent, and unalienable rights, amongst which are the enjoying and defending life and liberty, acquiring, possessing, and protecting property, and pursuing and obtaining happiness and safety. Therefore, no person born in this country or brought over from overseas ought to be holden by law to serve any person as a servant, slave, or apprentice. After arriving to the age of 21 years, unless bound by a person's own consent, after arriving to such age, or bound by law for the payments of debts, damages, fines, costs, or the like. See, Britain took note, and by 1779, Parliament had enacted the Penitentiary Act, which introduced state prisons for the first time. The act was drafted by prison reformer John Howard and jurist William Blackstone. It recommended imprisonment as an alternative sentence to death or transportation. The American colonies had been used as the destination for transported English criminals. England was building prisons in America to provide a colonizing workforce of European indentures, and only 2 were built in London. Paragraph partially drafted from Wiki Penitentiary Act. Now, Lincoln knew all of this and worked in collaboration with Southern lawmakers to come to this deal of conversion. In his own words, he told the leaders of the South that their only differences about slavery lie in quality versus quantity, i.e., the North thought it was wrong and should be limited through state, federal-controlled prisons, and the South thought it was a right that should be legal to all citizens. In the end, Lincoln won and enacted the full conversion of slavery to prison slavery, from citizen-owned to state and federal owned. Right here in South Carolina, where I live, SDOC proudly bragged, or did brag, on their website about history tracing back to the first state prison in 1866, exactly 1 year after the emancipation. Chain gangs were part of the prison slave labor practice, and in particularly a massive road development project during the 1890s. Anytime more laborers were needed, business leaders would contact the local politicians or magistrates, who would use police and courts in concert with existing black code laws to gather men, women, and children at their leisure. The black communities after 1865 were turned into human shopping malls. So with the ratification of the 13th Amendment, convict leasing, as it had been practiced in 1846 Alabama, continued on until July 1st, 1928. That is 73 years of suffering after slavery supposedly ended, all the way through segregation and Jim Crow laws. This is why we say as abolitionists that slavery did not end at any time in American history. It was only transformed. Anyone who teaches or tells you that slavery ended is lying, or an uninformed parrot repeating what they accept at face value after 150 years of deception. The next stage became known as Unicorn and began on December 11, 1934, as a subsidiary to the U.S. Inc. and is today a $1 billion a year industry. Their primary product is prison labor and services at cutthroat costs. I mean, who can compete with slave labor? And they have a veritable chokehold contract on all goods made for the U.S. government. They and other prison labor companies provide caged and working bodies for commercial international private corporations like Whole Foods, McDonald's, Starbucks, Verizon, and dozens of other corporations. And we'll get into that in later parts of this. There you have the research that I had put together, and it's called How Legalized Slavery Exists in America. That's part one.
Max, you want to take us to the break?
Oh, I was just letting the music take us out. You're listening to New Abolitionist Radio with Max Parker, Scotty Reed, and Johanna Nalaya. We're talking about modern-day slavery and human trafficking. We'll be right back after these messages.
The Black Talk Media Project funds the use of new media technology in efforts to restore independent Black voices to the myriad of issues affecting Afro-descendant people all over the planet. If media can control the minds of the masses, as Malcolm X once said, then you must ask yourself, who is in control of the media targeting the masses of Black people today? Help bring back independence, self-determination, and respect for Black culture in the production of global media by joining the effort to crowdfund new Black media for the new millennium. Visit blacktalkmediaproject.org for more information on how you can invest in public Black radio for the masses.
Welcome back to New Abolitionist Radio. We'll continue our conversation. So what did you guys think of the dissemination I put together there?
Oh, that was great, man. I mean, you are not a award-winning spoken word artist for nothing.
Well, thank you, brother. I tried to break it down as simple as possible, and as my history as a poet has taught me to really condense information and to just give you what you need, really enough to make you understand what is going on. So I gave the facts as I knew them, and what we researched going back all the way to 1700s, and
you know what, though?
Vermont is going right now today.
If I ever make a trip to Washington, D.C., I've only been through there once, but if I ever make a trip to Washington, D.C., I'm making sure I bring a carton of eggs so that I can egg. Y'all might see me getting arrested on TV or something, man, of me egging Abraham Lincoln. You know what I'm saying? Because, I mean, the total deception surrounding him is just mind-boggling. I mean, we've uncovered the letters that he sent before the Civil War to Representative Stevenson down there in Georgia, his good buddy when he was in the Congress. And he said, he told him in a personal letter, please tell all them other crackers down there in the South, I do not intend to interfere with your property or interfere with the institution of slavery. But they didn't believe him. And so they went on ahead and seceded from the Union. And then at the conclusion of it, too many white boys was dying for these Africans. So they was like, look, we got to end this war. So look, we're going to go back to what I tried to tell y'all from the beginning, okay? That we just going to move it to the prisons. You still get to utilize the slaves. You just got to contract with the prisons and jails to get at them now. So, I mean, the deception surrounding that man is just mind-boggling to me, considering we got all these so-called historians and academics. Why are they going along with this? You know, why are they going along? Because they're afraid to speak truth and then lose their little tenured positions or something. I just don't understand how so many academics can just bury their hands in the sand in regards to the legacy of Abraham Lincoln.
Well, I don't really understand either, Scotty, but I do know this, that something this big, this groundbreaking, it just changes society as we know it. It changes our understanding of who we are and what we've been dealing with for over 150 years completely. And something that big is always met with a lot of resistance first. People believe that the world was, a saucer for the longest time. People believe that the earth was the center of the universe for a long time. And even those who came forward with the truth about, our solar system were chastised and imprisoned and even killed by the Catholic Church. So when information is this big and this just groundbreaking as it is right here, it's met with the fiercest resistance. And it's hard for even the most intellectual among us to finally realize that they've been wrong for most of their life.
Cognitive dissonance. People hear it.
Yeah, imagine if you're a teacher, right? And you've been teaching for 30 years that slavery ended. And you've been teaching all these students and you've got your story down pat and you show all the facts as you know them, and then somebody hits you with this information. How are you supposed to act?
Well, if you're an honest person, if you're an honest person, you're supposed to act grateful. You're supposed to show gratitude. Right. You're supposed to be thankful and say, wow, I was once blind, but now I see. And then you're supposed to go out and go teach others what you just learned. If you're an honest person, if you have integrity, if you have self-respect, that's what you should do. But that makes me wonder about all these people that continue to be slavery deniers, both passively and actively, going out here to go against what we're teaching people, what we're showing people. We're not trying to indoctrinate anybody. We're just revealing, shining the light on what's already there. So, yeah, if you're honest, you'd be grateful.
You know what? You just gave me an ideal, Johan, and we got to make slavery denial as despicable as Holocaust deniers. Because you deny the Holocaust, people gon' act like, you shot somebody or something like that. So we got to make slavery denial in the same vein as being so disrespectful and just crazy. How dare you talk about slavery was abolished when it was not?
Yeah, I've been doing that since 2014. It was one of my New Year's resolutions to be like a shark when it comes to that. I don't care if you're friend, family, ally, whoever. If you're coming out wrong with this, I'm going to say it out loud. So you know, and everybody around you knows that there is another perspective and you missed it. So particularly when I see clergy friends of mine come out and talk about all of these different issues and never mention modern day slavery. But yeah, that's good ideas.
Yeah, we know what we're up against. You get them to look at it like you said, like the Holocaust or like abusing animals. You probably could affect people if you could get them on that level. They don't want to see no animal take no L. So, but they're willing to see people out here suffer and be in cages because they're being classified as being criminals. So it's like they deserve whatever kind of treatment they're getting. And we really got to get humans back to the place where they care about humans and their welfare.
I'm not trying to get into a genocide pissing contest with anybody, but the facts are clear that no matter who it is, every other, people that have gone through issues even remotely similar, whether it be the Holocaust or Native American extinction that have been going on, none of them have been told to forget about it. None of them have been told to just move on as if nothing has occurred. None of them are continually told that this is not important to who they are. But we're told to forget about it, to act like nothing ever happened, to just accept things as they are and keep moving on. Every time we bring it up, it's thrown in our face as if we're the problem. Just like Lincoln said himself, that we were a source of misery to this country. So, yeah, we got to change that. We have to change a lot of perspectives, beginning with the idea that slavery ever ended at any point at all. And I'd like to think that we've accomplished that to a very large degree now. I would like to think that. I guess the truth is in the callers who call up and tell us that their lives have changed and that they've seen a whole new thing. And once you see this differently, everything about how you live your life tends to change. I know mine did.
Yeah, but see, the people who listen to Black Talk Radio seek out this type of programming, as the caller had stated, Vince, here in North Carolina. He sought it out because he knew that he was missing something or wasn't getting something from the mainstream talk radio that he was listening to, like NPR, and which I have caught NPR and a bunch of lies in some of the stuff they put out. But you know, we are still not reaching the millions that mainstream media reaches, and so that's why I have the project going on to crowdfund a mass media network, you know, where we can then go at the people, come to the people on a localized level with media and what have you. So that's what we're up against, but it's still at the same time, like I was telling somebody else about the listening audience of Black Talk Radio. And I was like, you know, sometimes it's not how many people are tuning in, but it's who's tuning in. And apparently the right people are tuning in, or else we wouldn't be seeing this language change in some of the mainstream media, like, you know, Sean King putting out that article about the 13th, and which a listener emailed me about that too, said, y'all, I know y'all making an impact because here in New York, this is the largest media market in NYC, in the country. So for the New York Daily News to publish an article calling out the 13th Amendment and saying that it didn't abolish slavery, then so again, it's not sometimes, although we want to reach as many people as possible, but also I don't get discouraged because when I hear slave catchers like the former commissioner of the NYPD tell a group of cadets talking about they view us as slave catchers, I know who he's been listening to. I know where he's getting his information. So it's not so much the quantity, but it is who those people are that are listening.
Word. In the words of abolitionist William Wilberforce, you may choose to look the other way, but you can never say again that you did not know. So yeah, brother, we're touching them out there. Indirectly, we're influencing quite a bit, and if that's all we got, let's work with it until we can get our crowdfunding going and we can really make a huge impact. I'm looking forward to a meeting with Brian Stevenson so I can talk to him about something like that coming November 17th. And this Friday, or actually tomorrow afternoon, I'm going to be meeting with one of his representatives. Brian Stevenson is from the Equal Justice Initiative out of Alabama, by the way, another abolitionist organization who was just awarded $1 million by Google. Lord, if we had $1 million, Scotty, oh, man. Well, we still got 45 minutes left, 2 segments, and a poem to read. Any stories that you guys in particular want to go over that you picked through the week?
Man. It's a ton of stuff going on. We mentioned the Bureau of Prisons sneaking in a renewal of a contract. I mean, we don't have to go all the way into the segment, but for people that really do pay attention and listen to, you know, how we break things down, just so they'll understand, because I met quite a bit of resistance through Facebook from people that were saying, don't trust it, it's not really going to happen, and, you know, all these kind of things. So, okay, here's our first little indicator, and I'll be brief on this, and like I said, I don't necessarily want to, you know, get into breaking down this story because we got a ton of them, but the distinction is in the memo from the Deputy Attorney General, Sally Yates, when she put that memo out. She said, the quote is, as each contract reaches the end of its term, the Bureau should either decline to renew that contract or substantially reduce its scope in a manner consistent with law and the overall decline of the Bureau's inmate population. So what they did is GEO put up an 8% reduction in the number of beds that the government's going to pay for at that facility. So they went from 1,962 beds originally to 1,800 beds with the extension to September 30th, 2018 as the new extension of the contract. So there you go. It is a change, and that was a landmark memo that came out, and we saw the stock shares drop. We saw the changes and the ripple effect throughout, you know, the country itself, all the way down to the states and Department of Homeland Security and ICE also considering, getting rid of the private prisons and stopping this practice. So we saw that effect come, but now we see in practice how the GEO group, as they promised their shareholders that they felt like it was a market overreaction, they felt like they were confident they were still going to be able to, carry on business with the government despite what that memo said. You see what they're doing is the minutia of following the letter of the law, so to speak, and just reducing their contract. It gets renewed, but it's reduced by 162 beds. So there you go.
Wow. Scotty, anything from you?
No, y'all posted plenty, so the only thing I chose was an abolitionist to profile, so I'll just follow you guys' lead on these stories.
I would like to note that we are now entering our 4th week of the historic prison strike. It's a national prison strike organized by IWW, Incarcerated Workers Committee. And it is a slavery rebellion in basic essence, and it's the largest in American history, affecting more than 24 states and 40 facilities, with, as I've heard reports, as many as 25 to 40,000 prisoners, including guards, participating. At one point, an entire staff of guards refused to go to work in Alabama in support of the prisoners who were striking, leaving the warden himself to go around feeding people behind cages in support of these prisoners, because they see it, they know what it is, they're there every day. They know exactly what role they're playing. This is slavery and human trafficking. In Alabama, the prisons are at 200% occupancy. 200%. And they're still working, making commercial goods sold on the open market under the most inhumane conditions imaginable. And now they're being abused because of their act of defiance, which mirrors the same acts that occurred in Attica Prison in 1971.
So how is this historic? I'm sorry, was that Johanna?
Yes. I'm just saying this is the 4th week now, that's all.
Well, I was
just to that, I just had some numbers right quick I found. Just saying it's over 700,000 American inmates working every day. That's obviously well over or nearly half the total population. They said in 2015, those 700,000 inmate workers brought in a net profit of over $472 million just to the correctional industry itself. So that doesn't even mention the numbers of how many hundreds of millions they generated for companies like McDonald's, Walmart, Victoria's Secret, and so on and so forth.
Yeah,
well,
exactly, man. Talking about hundreds of billions of dollars in labor.
Listen, this historic strike has been going on across this nation, and the CEO of USA Inc. ain't said a word about it, and I know he know about it because I've been tweeting at him about it, man. I've been tagging him in them tweets at POTUS on Twitter, and just ain't said nothing, man. And again, it's already been noted, 3 weeks in, 4 weeks in, mainstream media, CNN, you hear Don Lemon or Anderson Cooper talking about it? Nope. No, you're not going to hear them talking about it, man. So you got to ask yourself, why would they want to keep this quiet? Why would they want to keep it quiet? And then this also goes to people who talk about the right way and the wrong way to protest. Well, these protests in these prisons have been nonviolent. Either they're going on hunger strikes or they're staying in the cage and not going to work. Okay, nonviolent. And you see it's not getting any coverage from the mainstream media or any comments from the chief executive officer of USA Inc. Now, I bet you they had took a bunch of guards hostage and was holding, shanks to their throats or what have you, and saying, hey, we'll release the hostages when we can negotiate an end to prison slavery. I bet you they'll be all over it then, or if they were burning down the plantation, they would be all over it then. And talking about, look at these savages and all this and that. So that's why when people call in and talking about, or I hear somebody like a Tim Tebow, all right, talk about a wrong way to protest. I mean, it ain't no wrong way to protest. And it ain't no wrong way to end slavery. Okay, if it take bloodshed, then it take bloodshed. I got blood to give. Okay, so ain't no right way or wrong way to oppose what they doing. Okay, so I just want to get that out there because, a lot of people, they want to be in this respectability politics, but then, then everything you do, they find something wrong with it. So shout out to the prisoners across this land who are protesting against modern day slavery.
Word, shout out to these brothers risking their lives for freedom, because behind prison walls, they'll do anything and can do anything to you and get away with it. Literally get away with murder, as George Malincrot's book shows us in the case out in Florida, How to Get Away with Murder. Well, we're 20 minutes into our 9 o'clock hour, and we still got our 2 segments, and I guess about 20 minutes besides that to spend. There is some stuff that I want to go over in addition to the one. The first one I just pointed out was our prison slave labor strike that is going on right now. If your media, local media, isn't playing it, isn't talking about it, maybe you should send them some links. If you know any people in the media, send them some links and see what happens. Maybe the local media will participate, whereas the national media is completely ignoring this historic event. And I know why they're ignoring it, just as well as you just pointed out, Scotty. They employ prison slave labor. It would be very difficult for them to start talking about these things when their employers are doing it specifically. It's very much like the CEO of AT&T telling us about how important black lives are to him, while that very company is using prison slave labor for pennies on the dollar in prisons. So that's talking about two sides of your face right there.
One of the things, too, I wanted to mention was this news about, and we hadn't had a chance to discuss it, guys, this news about Ken Thompson stepping down because he supposedly got a cancer diagnosis.
What?
Yeah, this just came out yesterday afternoon. Would have been, Tuesday, October the 4th, as this podcast, somebody hear it in the future. Yeah, the news came out yesterday afternoon that he supposedly got a cancer diagnosis. He didn't say cancer of what or to what degree or whatever, but he's stepping down from his position and letting the assistant deputy district attorney take over, the office while he's fighting cancer. So, I mean, it's just, excuse me, I don't want to make light of the man's situation if indeed that's what's going on, but this is America. So I'm not even going to pretend like the powers that be in the political machine and the systems and the folks, the players and all of this don't operate in this fashion. I'm not even going to pretend like we don't have a history of people stepping down, standing down, getting cut off at the knees right when they're at a point of having power and influence and making changes to the system that has been operating freely. I mean, Charles Hines was in office for 25 years, never missed a day, never skipped a beat, incarcerated 100,000 people. And hell, Ken Thompson's office found 25 they already got out, and got 100 of just one cop, Louis Garcella's murder convictions that they investigated. So if it's just one cop with 100, it's got to be 1,000 cops over the last 30 years with 100 apiece that could easily be investigated. If it's only 3 to 5% of 2.5 million people that are wrongfully convicted, that's well over 100,000 people. So to hear that this brother comes out and says that he's stepping down from this position, that is still, even after the Peter Liang statement where he was saying he didn't recommend that the man go to serve time. I know we talked about that on this program. I felt like he kind of basically had to kind of parlay on that one, just give that word so he could go on and within the next week get another person out of prison, and then the next month another person and another person. This stepping down, man, it don't sit well with me. I hope the brother's okay, and I hope he gets well if he really is sick, but this don't sit well with me at all.
You think he might have been getting some death threats or something?
Man, it ain't no way to tell. I know that Scott Stringer is the New York financial comptroller, and I know he made a statement regarding these exonerations, and I know he said that there's just ain't enough money to pay these people when they're getting out. And I know that these people, when they've been getting released, have seen a sliding scale from the earlier exonerees around the country were getting, in the tens of millions of dollars, and it became single-digit millions of dollars. And then it's starting to get to the point where in certain states now they're breaking down, the exoneration. Like here, state of Missouri, like they got a number they put on it of, it's something like a cap of like $40,000 or $50,000 a year. So you're going from when it was a novelty and they didn't really think that it was going to be exposed, and the numbers of people exonerated was still in the hundreds. It was a bigger number. But in the last years, we've seen so many more hundreds of people coming out. It's nearly 2,000 people have been exonerated, and the number is only going to grow because the Conviction Integrity Unit. We're affecting the narrative to the point it's a damn television show coming on now called Conviction Integrity Unit. It's like that. So I wouldn't be surprised if the man wasn't given a directive. Look, you can step down, or you can stay, and we can handle it the other way. So I don't know. I don't want to sound like a crazy conspiracy theorist, but I've seen the evil these people do. We've all seen it. We all report on it week in, week out. We've seen people just go through hell just for raising their hand and saying, hey, I don't think this is right, let alone go out here and get over 20 people freed, and you still got over 100 of just one detective's cases to look into.
Yeah, like George Malincrot when he exposed the murder of Darrell Rainey.
Yep. Going through hell. Going through hell.
In a prison set.
And I think George
numbers.
Hey, and I think George is now having
a number that I don't agree with.
I'm sorry.
You said it's like 100,000.
I don't know. Well, if you look at people that's in jail or prison for nonviolent, victimless crimes, that would be the majority of the population. So I would say that they're unjustly incarcerated or enslaved and what have you. But I had a question about Malincrot. He's even having trouble finding jobs now, right?
Yeah, he's struggling, man, all the way around.
Y'all purchase his book. Give out that book information, Yohanan, if you will.
Okay. And that's something else. His book was put on the banned list in the prison system.
Banned from prisons. You can read Mein Kampf, but you can't read George Malincrot's How to Get Away with Murder, the story of Darren Rainey.
Yeah. So this
when
is
you mentioned that 100,000,
I
was thinking of Annie Dukin, though, man. I was thinking, Annie Dukin's responsible for 40,000 at least by herself. So 100,000 it can be possible.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. That's just an accepted field number, just like the same way that the FBI's numbers on crime are accepted by Fox News, and they can come out and say that there's so many hundreds of blacks killed by cops, but then there's so many thousands killed by black on black crime, and then try to snuff out that conversation. But we know that the federal guidelines have been telling local jurisdictions all over the country to report for nearly a decade, and it's less than 25% that actually reports their numbers. So this is the kind of thing I'm saying. When you say 3 to 5% is an accepted number by the community, by the authorities, 3 to 5% of those that are probably or could be wrongfully convicted out of 2.5 million, we know there's way more than that. And then, like you said, when you throw in nonviolent, victimless crimes, when you talk about drug prohibition, and in America, alcohol prohibition damn near destroyed the country. And then you want to look at drug prohibition now in the age of big pharma, where people are becoming drug addicts after taking doctors' prescriptions. But, the numbers are ridiculous, man. We've had people that have gotten out of prison that have told us, I remember somebody was telling us they estimate it might be 15% of the people that are in prisons might be there for good reason, so to speak, for violent crimes against other people or, major crimes against property and this type of thing. All the rest of it, some variation of nonviolent, drug-related crimes.
Right. Yeah. It's the majority are in there for nonviolent, drug-related crimes. There was a recent study that came out from Prison Policy Initiative called The Whole Pie 2016, which shows you exactly why people are in prison, how many are there, and the full numbers. I'll put it on New Abolitionist Radio and also it's at our spot on Black Talk Radio Network, so you can view it. There is some good news that's coming out. I wanted to share another victory for the abolitionists, and
if you
shows
want,
again that
Max,
we are affecting the narrative in the halls of politics. But first, let's take this break, and when we come back, I'm going to tell you the story about the prosecutors who withhold or tamper with evidence now face felony charges. That is his story.
Max,
you're listening to New Abolitionist Radio.
Yeah, before we go,
we'll be right back after.
Before we go to the break,
go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, before we go to the break, you had mentioned the Mr. Stevenson, the CEO of AT&T, and the comments he made, and that was actually the focus of my Black Talk Radio weekly commentary for Tanya Free and Friends, which comes on at 2:00 on this network on Wednesdays. So I want to play that because I want people to hear what he said. Okay, so this is what's his name again? Randall Stevenson. Yeah, Randall Stevenson is his name. And if I can just locate the commentary, I'm just about there. Let me see. AT&T. Okay, yeah. It's title. I titled it AT&T and Modern Slavery. And then we'll, right after this, go into the break. You're listening to New Abolitionist Radio. If you have a question or comment for us, please don't wait as we're entering into the last half hour of the program. The telephone number to dial is 641-715-3660. The participant code is 549-032#. Hit *6 and 1 to comment on air. We'll be right back. Last week, AT&T CEO Randall Stevenson had some comments about the State of the Union for his employees.
Sadly, racial tension is ripping apart the very fabric of our communities right now. And it's troubling to watch what's happening today in Charlotte, what's happened in Ferguson, Missouri, the killing of black men in Falcon Heights, Minnesota, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, the murder of 5 police officers in Dallas. The murder of police officers in Baton Rouge, the mass killings in Orlando. I could go on, but folks, you get the idea. We got a problem. Now, there are some that are here tonight that the mentality and the thought process would be the police need to crack down and get control of these communities. There are also some who are expressing some legitimate pent-up anger over injustice and violence and say we have to deal with that first. And there's going to be several people in between those two ends. The question I have to ask is, where are you on this?
Mr. Stevenson is asking, where do you stand on the issues plaguing the nation, but he has yet to respond to a Change.org petition pointing out that AT&T has been using prison slave labor since 1993, when in a move against unionized labor, the company started using prisoners making less than $2 an hour to do call center work. On October the 7th, the documentary film The 13th will premiere on Netflix, and it is said to expose modern slavery in prisons by way of the 13th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. The root cause of these problems in policing and the courts is slavery. Mr. Stevenson should watch the 13th and see how AT&T is part of the problems he laid out in his speech. This has been Scotty Reed with your Black Talk Radio Weekly Commentary. Visit me on btrcommunity.com for a new online black social media experience. The Black Talk Radio Network is made possible in part with help from the Black Talk Media Project, a North Carolina-based nonprofit engaged in the production and distribution of independent digital black media. Find out more by going to blacktalkradionetwork.com or blacktalkmediaproject.org and look for the menu tab, Crowdfunding Black Media. Black Talk Media Project, helping to provide you with new black media for the new millennium. You are tuned in to Black Talk Radio, new black media for the new millennium.
Welcome back to New Abolitionist Radio. Thank you, Scotty, for sharing that with us indeed, so people can hear with his own words how he's saying one thing and doing another. This is the CEO of AT&T, a company that uses prison slave labor, pennies on the dollar, paying people to do what others can do on the outside where so many are unemployed.
Yeah,
Black
man.
lives really
Yeah.
matter. They also matter behind bars.
Yeah, and I bet you that AT&T probably has a poor hiring record for felons. So what I'm saying is, you can work for AT&T if you behind bars, but if you out on the streets, you may or may not be able to get a job.
Yeah, I'm willing to just put that out there and just have it a thing where if he can prove otherwise, or if AT&T want to prove otherwise, they can try to rebut and shut me up. I've been saying it for a couple of years. AT&T hires more black men in prison to work in their call centers and to take on those jobs at slave wages, slave labor for slave wages, than they do with the outside world. So until they can show some kind of proof, maybe I don't have the right numbers, maybe I don't see all the information, but from what I've been able to find out, that's the truth. They hiring more people of color, more Black Lives Matter, as he want to bring up in his meeting and take on that credit and convince a bunch of Negroes to run out and switch over their contracts and switch over their business to AT&T because, he mentioned us. He must love us. And this is what they're doing. You can't go get a job with him, but you can go switch your service over to him because of something he said and you got a soundbite. You should know the truth, that he's hiring more people out of your community behind bars than he would let come in and do an interview or give them an honest chance to get a job.
Sometimes the truth hurts, don't it? Well, I want to share this final story before we finish up with our last segments. And it's another victory, as I said before. Every week we do our 21st Century Rider on the Underground Railroad, showing another exonerated individual who was falsely incarcerated. And more often than not, it always seems to involve prosecutorial misconduct. And they do everything you can imagine to keep these brothers and sisters in these prisons when they have never done anything at all. Well, that's about to change, apparently. The Los Angeles Times published this article titled "Prosecutors Who Withhold or Tampered with Evidence Now Face Felony Charges," and it's by Christopher Goffard, a contact reporter. It says, amid an ongoing controversy in the Orange County Courthouse involving accusations of prosecutorial misconduct, a new law will ratchet up penalties for California prosecutors who tamper with evidence or hide exculpatory material from the defense. Under the law, which was introduced by Assemblywoman Patty Lopez, Democrat from San Fernando, and signed by Governor Jerry Brown on Friday, a prosecutor can receive up to 3 years in prison for altering or intentionally withholding evidence that defendants might use to exonerate themselves. Previously, those acts were considered misdemeanors. Wow, that just hurts saying it, that previously it was considered a misdemeanor to hide evidence that would free people who were innocent. It goes on to say, here's so many, say again, Scotty?
Question, who's going to prosecute the prosecutor? Because I certainly have not heard of Kamala Harris, the California Attorney General, bringing charges, misdemeanor or otherwise, against any prosecutor for wrongdoing.
In the history of the United States, only one prosecutor has ever faced charges for prosecutorial misconduct. So hopefully this new law that has just come into play will change that. I guess we're going to see. It's because they're doing it, so it's only a matter of application now. She says, I hear so many stories about innocent people across California and across the country who have been wrongfully convicted, Lopez said. I just hope that when people think the rules don't apply to them, they will think twice before they abuse their power. Lopez said the legislation was not specifically inspired by events in Orange County. However, the controversy surrounding the office of longtime District Attorney Tony Rackacross spurred the bill's advocates and informed the debate on the Senate floor. In March 2015, Orange County Superior Court Judge Thomas Goethals removed Rackacross' office from one of the most high-profile cases, the prosecution of mass murderer Scott DeCry. The judge said prosecutors repeatedly had violated DeCry's rights by failing to turn over evidence, though he did not find they had engaged in willful misconduct. The California Attorney General's office, which has inherited the case, is appealing Goethals' ruling. The Cry's attorney, Assistant Public Defender Scott Sanders, has argued that Orange County jailers have flouted inmates' rights for years with an illegal jailhouse informant program, and that prosecutors consistently have tried to conceal it. The scandal, which drew nationwide attention, has resulted in the collapse of cases against numerous criminal defendants. So you can read the rest of that story either at New Abolitionist Radio or at community.blacktalkradionetwork.com. I consider that a victory, man. There's a law in place now to prosecute prosecutors. And as you said, who's going to prosecute the prosecutors? I guess that is yet to be determined.
Yeah, it's definitely a good development in terms of the law. But like I was talking about earlier today, like, for example, you got the slave catchers in Florida who are going on strike in Broward County. That's where the Miami Dolphins play, and saying, oh, until they stop this madness and start paying respect to the slavers' anthem, we're not going to provide them an escort, and we're going to let the angry mob of racist suspects get to them and whatnot. Well, in the Constitution of Florida, it says public servants can't go on strike. But they're saying they're going on strike and nobody's doing anything about it. So I always want to see these sort of things be turned into law to where we can hold people accountable. That's only half the battle, because then it comes to the question of, well, who's going to be the one that prosecute them? Just like you got the Department of Justice bringing RICO charges against young black men in New York City, charging them with RICO charges, man, and what have you. But I've yet to see them make a case against any of these slave catcher departments who are working with city officials to raise revenue by just targeting people and giving them unneeded tickets. And then when they can't pay, shuffling them around in the jails.
It's a business, man. It's a system. It's a system. That's why I try to tell people and encourage people. We don't have time to be beefing with individuals. I'm not saying what I'm saying about this system or going off on white supremacy like I just got a problem with white people. I don't really care too much about no individuals I meet from day to day. The systems are what we're here to impact. If you can affect these systems, it's going to get so many people out of the way. I mean, again, you referred to scripture earlier. That's for the believers. When you could save just one person, you cover a multitude of sins. If you could just get just one person that's pushed out of the way of the system that's set up, that they don't teach our children about, that they don't teach about in school, that they don't talk about in church, that they don't warn you about every day. You see the viral videos of killings, and you see all this mess going on all the time, all these debates, but nobody talks about the system that's in place that creates this environment and feeds off of this chaos. If you could just stop the system from devouring just one person, think about the benefit to your own personal life.
Word. It's just a bunch of hypocrites, man. Bunch of hypocrites saying one thing and doing another. What did James Baldwin say? I can't believe what you do because I can't believe what you say because I see what you do.
See what you
we
do.
see what you do. We can see it all day long. And it's just hypocrites who are just avoiding any culpability and trying to put themselves on the, I guess, in the history books on the side of the right when they have been on the side of wrong all along and are on the side of wrong while they're talking about being on the side of right. That was one of the biggest issues for Frederick Douglass as he was coming up. And the poem that I was going to share today says a lot about that. He really had issues with the church in particular during the 1800s and the roles they played, just like I have an issue with the church today and the same thing that they're doing. Up there yapping about everything but the right thing and not backing the abolitionist movement as a whole. I mean, I just met a brother out in Missouri who was, he broke bread with us. He was a bishop of a church representing 30 different states, and they were all coming together the 13th and the 13th and 14th. He's like, yeah, Max, I'm with you 100%. I want you to come out here and speak to our congregation because they need to hear this. And I'm going to call you as soon as you get back to South Carolina. We're going to make this happen. I ain't received a phone call yet. No, nothing. just yapping, but really ain't about nothing.
And I told you, the town hall meeting that we did here, the pastor did call for that. I thought we had a breakthrough with that. Here's a man of faith that wants to know how to help the community. We have a good town hall meeting. He had me on the panel with 2 law enforcement officers and a fire. And we discussed community relations between the black population of the city and law enforcement. We talked about numbers. We talked about all this information, gave people good information on what they could do from a political standpoint to help themselves. This same pastor is God brother is the brother Crusher down in Tulsa that got shot. And everybody saw the video of it. That's his family. So he again puts out the call to arms and talks about, how we got to make these changes. Reach out to them again and tell them, hey, we could get the town hall thing going again. We can keep coming and help get this information to people, help show them how to do. This is the election season. Let's get the people educated. Same thing. And I've already been in front of this man at a town hall meeting. I ain't heard nothing in the weeks, in months since. So, I mean, I don't know what it takes for people. I don't know. You would think your own brother getting shot down and relating that directly back to the information we already discussed would be enough to move you. But I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either, man. Scotty, we got like 15 minutes left, a little bit less than that. How you want to roll with this? You want me to do the poem first and then do the final 2 segments, or do the final 2 segments and then close with the poem?
Close with the poem.
All right. So then we'll go on to our next segment, one of our final 2 here, which will be our 21st Century Rider of the Underground Railroad. And this is our most recent here. It is by the name of Jerome Morgan. On January 17, 2014, Jerome Morgan's murder conviction was overturned. 2 weeks later, he walked out of prison after spending 20 years incarcerated for a crime he did not commit. However, he remained accused of that crime and lived in a state of pretrial limbo with restrictions on his freedom until May 27, 2016, when the state finally dismissed the charges and he was fully exonerated. In 1993, Jerome was wrongly arrested at age 17 and prosecuted for the murder of Clarence Landry III at a Sweet 16 party. I think we might have did this one before already, but nonetheless, let's go with it again. A fight broke out between 2 groups of boys at the party. Shots were fired and 3 teens were hit to survive. But 16-year-old Clarence Landry died on the scene. By all accounts, the gunman fled the ballroom immediately after the shooting and was chased down the street through an alley where he jumped over a fence. When the police arrived, they sealed the room, and the detective took down the names of everyone in the room, including Jerome, whose name was listed by the detectives in their report. Jerome was prosecuted based on the identification testimony of 2 teenage witnesses, one of whom had previously told police it was definitely not Jerome. Post-conviction investigation by Innocence Project New Orleans revealed that the prosecutors had in their file a complaint history that proved that it took police a mere 6 minutes to arrive after the shooting, not 30 to 45 minutes as the jury heard. This made the already questionable theory that a gunman, after successfully fleeing from the crime scene, returned to a room of over 80 witnesses even less likely. There simply was not enough time for the gunman to flee, run down the street to an alley, jump over a fence, hide the murder weapon, and return to the scene of the crime unnoticed before the police arrived and sealed the room. The teenage witnesses also admitted in 2013 that the detectives had told them to name Jerome Morgan, one of several people about whom rumors were circulated among high school students in the months after the shooting. Based on both the discovery and the complaint's history and the recantation of the 2 teenage witnesses, Jerome was freed on bond February 4th, 2014, and granted a new trial. For 2 years after his conviction was overturned, IPNL fought to clear Jerome's name, while the district first fought the ruling overturning his conviction, and when unsuccessful, fought to re-prosecute Jerome in spite of the clear evidence.
Max must got a bad connection tonight. Looks like we lost Max, and I'm sure he will. Hopefully he noticed, man. Yohanan, you still there, bro?
Yeah, I'm still here with you. He might still be reading. He might not even know he got cut off.
Yeah. That technology, man. I think he in the woods, man, but I don't know.
Well, they got I think Max was saying they might be evacuated or might be near about getting evacuated because the hurricane is.
Oh, he's back. He's back. Here he is. Okay, Max, we got you back, man.
I'm back. Yeah, it's a hurricane coming this way, so for me to lose connection. unusual, I would think. But we have done this 21st Century Rider before. Apologies, sometimes I get in too much of a rush. Nonetheless, there is this story, and once again, welcome to freedom, Brother Jerome.
Welcome to freedom.
Salute.
All right. Salute. Our next segment, as we do every week, is remembering our ancestors and studying them, so we know how to avoid the mistakes they made and how to exploit the successes that they had, and to give them remembrance. As a matter of fact, this is one of the programs one of the only programs in the country that probably remembers those who fought, bled, and died to give the freedoms that we do have today. So this is our Abolitionist in Profile provided by Scotty Reed.
Okay, today, before I start, and today's reading will be live. I did not have an opportunity to pre-record it, so I'm going to do it live tonight. But I just want to say this, because I don't have time to do everything. I try to do as much as humanely possible. But if you are a member of, let's say, what is that, Wikipedia? Now, I know a lot of people don't have a high opinion of Wikipedia, but it is a good source of information because you are supposed to have the links to your sources, and then those links go to the outside. So it's supposed to have the documentation that what they're putting has been sourced. Now, but that's not the issue that I have with it. My issue is the language. And so sometimes when I get this information, I have to rewrite it. Because I other than using the term prison slaves and what have you, if I'm using it in a strategic manner, otherwise I don't refer to people as slaves. They are victims of slavery. They were enslaved persons. And I noticed in Paul Jennings' entry in Wikipedia, they kept calling him a slave and what have you. So I would like to say to those people who join these type of communities, I even have a Wikipedia membership, but you have to log in and start changing the language. Now, I have done that in the past with Wikipedia, and then they would change it back. You know what I'm saying? So it's just always a constant battle, man, to change the narrative. But I just refuse to refer to victims as slaves. You know, that's just it's dehumanizing. You know, Mr. Paul Jennings, who we're going to focus on as our abolitionist in profile, he was not a slave. He was a victim of slavery. So our abolitionist in profile will be Mr. Paul Jennings. Let me cue up my music. Paul Jennings was born into slavery at Montpelier in 1799. His mother, who was African Native American, was held in slavery by the family of President James Madison. During the War of 1812, let me turn this music down just a little bit. Y'all excuse me. Let me start over. Matter of fact. Paul Jennings was born into slavery at Montpelier in 1799. His mother, who was African Native American, was held in slavery by the family of President James Madison. During the War of 1812 between the Americans and British, Jennings did not make an attempt for his freedom by joining the British Army, which was offering freedom to persons enslaved by Americans. During the war, the White House was set on fire by those fighting with the British. But again, instead of making a break for freedom, Jennings instead risked his life to save a portrait known as the Lansdowne Portrait, which is a painting of America's first slaver-in-chief, George Rottenmouth Washington. Perhaps the 15-year-old Jennings thought the slaver president, James Madison, would free him for saving the portrait, but he was wrong, and he will be sold several more times before finally being sold to Senator Daniel Webster, who freed him. Jennings, after obtaining freedom, became part of the large free black community of Washington, D.C., which outnumbered enslaved persons by 3-1 at the time. In 1848, Jennings helped plan a mass escape of 77 slaves from Washington, D.C. on the schooner Pearl. It was the largest slavery escape attempt in U.S. history. In an effort funded by white abolitionists William Chaplin and Garrett Smith, The free black community of Washington enlarged the escape attempt, gathering victims of slavery willing to risk the 225-mile sailing journey to freedom in the North. The victims of slavery were captured and returned to Washington, D.C. after having been delayed by poor winds. Their enslavers quickly sold them to traders, and most were sold again in the Deep South. Jennings would later return to Virginia in the 1850s as a free man and was able to reunite with family he had been forced to leave years before. His 3 enslaved sons would escape and join the Union Army during the American Civil War. In 1865, Jennings would publish what is considered the first White House memoir, which was about his time as a captive victim of President James Madison. Jennings would buy a lot of land and build a home in Washington, D.C., where he again reunited with his children. His son John lived with him. His daughter Mary lived next door with her 2 children. His sons Franklin and William also lived in the area. Paul Jennings died at the age of 75 in 1874, leaving his family the house and property. New Abolitionist Radio salutes Paul Jennings and his sons.
Salute.
Salute. Yeah, you might have been right. He might have been looking for the meritorious manumission. He thought he was going to turn it. He was going to turn him in and he was going to get free. They showed him though, but he still made it.
Yeah, he made it, but I was like, he was only 15 years old at the time, so, but he saved while the White House was burning. They should have let it burn to the ground, but he saved the picture of old Rotten Mouth Washington, and I guess he thought he was going to get free. Oh, he saved a national treasure. Oh, we must reward him with freedom. No such thing.
Well, we're coming up to right. Is there anything you guys want to end with before I go into this poem?
Peace to the abolitionists. Yes to these oppressors.
And I would just like to say thank you. Just like the listener called in and thanked us for the programming on Black Talk Radio Network and for the information we put out through the various programs like New Abolitionist Radio. I have to say, we do our part. Using our skills and our talents, but we could not do this without the help of those who help fund the Black Talk Media Project. So this is a family affair. So thank you to everybody out there. And like Yohanan says, peace to the abolitionists, death to the oppressors.
Word. I would like to say that if you have never listened to the audiobook or read The Life of an American Slave by Frederick Douglass, then you should consider it mandatory reading for abolitionists. This is something I found in the appendix called A Parody by Frederick Douglass. Come, saints and sinners, hear me tell how pious priests whip Jack and Nell, and women buy and children sell, and preach all sinners down to hell, and sing of heavenly union. They'll bleat and baa and donal like goats, scourge down black sheep in strain-ed moats, array their backs in fine black coats, then seize their Negroes by the throats and choke the heavenly union. They'll church you if you sip a dram, and damn you if you steal a lamb, yet rob old Tony, Doll, and Sam of human rights and bread and ham, kidnappers heavenly union. They'll loudly talk of Christ's reward and bind his image with a cord and scold and swing the lash aboard and sell their brother in the Lord to handcuff heavenly union. They'll read and sing a sacred song and make a prayer both loud and long and teach the right and do the wrong, hailing the brother-sister throng with words of heavenly union. We wonder how such saints can sing of praise the Lord upon the wing, who roar and scold and whip and sting, and to their slaves and mammon cling in guilty conscious union. They'll raise tobacco, corn and rye, and drive and thieve and cheat and lie, and lay up treasures in the sky by making switch and cowskin fly in hopes of heavenly union. They'll crack old Tony on the skull and preach and roar like Bash and Bull, a braying ass of mischief full, then seize old Jacob by the wool and pull for heavenly union, a roaring, ranting, sleep man thief, who lived on mutton, veal, and beef, yet never would afford relief to needy, sable sons of grief, was big with heavenly union. Love not the world, the preacher said, and winked his eye and shook his head. He seized on Tom and Dick and Ned, cut short their meat and clothes and bread, yet still loved heavenly union. Another preacher, whining, spoke of one whose hearts for sinners broke. He tied old Nanny to an oak and drew the blood at every stroke and prayed for heavenly union. Two others opened their iron jaws and waved their children's stealing paws. There sat their children in gewgaws. By stinting Negroes' backs and maws, they kept up heavenly union. All good from Jack another takes and entertains their flirts and rakes, who dress as sleek as glossy snakes and cram their mouths with sweetened cakes. And this goes down for union. Remember, abolition is a reason for a revolution, so we can finally know some peace. Peace.
Rise up, 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 rise up. Showtime. Just lift your eyes up. Let your wise rise up, see the signs of the times. If it's time, rise up, rise up. When death and hell dwell among all God's people, when those we chose and trusted have become completely corrupted and inherently evil, when the feast that feeds you starves our father's children, when snuff, porn, and pedo forms begin to get top billing, rise up. When famine claims millions, when justice gives blind